Welcome in, or should I say, welcome back. It is College Football Smothered and Covered. Did you miss me? Because I missed you. And if you can see, there's a reason why I'm a little bit of a darker skin tone. It's because I've been in Mexico for about a week, sneaking one last vacation in before the start of football season. But it is August. There will be college football played this month. And this show is the one you need to pay attention to in order to get all of your preseason coverage. Not just this show. There are others. Go, please listen and watch Josh Payton, J.D. McKell, and Andy Staples, and all of those guys. They do a great job because here in the college football new media world, you're underserved. So you should be able to set up in your podcast lineup right there in your Apple, your podcast app, your Spotify. These are the shows that I want to listen to because we all bring different perspectives. And in this one, I hope to bring a pragmatic and honest perspective, just like a lot of those other people do, but in my own way. So if you're new to this show, it is a rehash of SEC Smothered and Covered, which was very successful till about 2018, had about 8,000 subscribers, and then it had to be stopped. The plug was pulled. Not happy about that. But here we are. We're rebuilding it from scratch. Tried to have it where I didn't rebuild it from scratch yet. Here we are. And here we are going back to the future because you look at this from Dan Murphy and Pete Thamel. Michigan coach Sherrone Moore violated NCAA rules in the draft of the notice of allegations. Now, I think one thing we have to, I feel like we have to remind people of this every time we talk about it. There were two investigations with Michigan. One was the COVID recruiting and COVID workout investigation, which is basically come and gone. And there's still the one outstanding with the Connor Stalions stuff. And that's what this has to deal with. And I think the headline, it sort of jumps off Michigan football and Sherrone Moore. Sherrone Moore obviously took over for Jim Harbaugh, was the head coach of the last 3 games, was a part-time coach in the first suspension for Harbaugh. But make no mistake, his name is mentioned in this headline to get people interested, because I think people kind of fell out of love with the story. Michigan won the national championship. Everybody moved on, whatever. But I think this is, it's interesting because you look at this story from ESPN, and if you're listening and not watching, new Michigan head coach Sherrone Moore is one of 7 members of the 2023 football program accused of violating NCAA rules in a draft obtained by ESPN. Of course, this is subject to change, but he faces a show cause penalty and possibly a suspension for deleting 52 text messages, a thread of 52 text messages with former staffer Connor Stalions in October 2023, which was the same day that reports surfaced and news broke of Connor Stalions' elaborate sign stealing scheme. Okay, cover up always worse than the crime. And in this case, Sherrone Moore, if you did delete that many text messages the day the news broke, dude, come on. Like these aren't Hillary Clinton's emails that got beach blit and hammers thrown on Blackberries. You're just deleting them and you think that's going to do the job? That's not how technology works. So Sherrone Moore, if he's suspended or gets a show cause, he should do so out of just pure stupidity. Like, you don't do that. Like, what are you trying to cover? If you're trying to cover something up, at least do it well. At least do it well. And I think when all is said and done and you look at this, like Michigan this year, not comprised of what it was last year. Senior leadership all over the place, veterans all over the place. Jim Harbaugh was very good at letting his veterans basically run the team. Michigan doesn't really have that this year, except on the defensive side of the ball, sure, front end, back end. But you got a new quarterback, you lose Blake Corum, you have Donovan Edwards. But, it's like all of those studs, well, most of those studs that you counted on to lead the team, navigate them through those rocky waters are gone. So let's just say there is a suspension for Sherrone Moore. First part of that schedule is pretty interesting, huh? Look on the if you're listening, you can go watch it on YouTube and Rumble. Fresno State at home. Oh, okay. Texas. Texas. Saturday, September 7th. That, my friends, is a problem. That is a problem. And I know Michigan fans and defenders will say, oh, it'll only be a 1-game suspension. Maybe, but it's a level 2 violation. Okay. That's pretty serious. The NCAA is definitely in the business of punishing teams maybe harsher than they would have in years past because their influence is dwindling. They've got to do something to be relevant. Might as well hammer the defending national champions. But here's the thing, too. Putting the schedule back up. You got Arkansas State, and then USC, Minnesota, and Washington. Look, Sherrone Moore is not going to be suspended for the USC game. You're not going 4 games deep into this. But let's just say he is suspended for 1 game. All right? He's suspended for 1 game. He misses Fresno State. Fresno State's pretty good. Pretty good. But do you really want Sherrone Moore's first true game as the full-time head coach of the Michigan Wolverines to be against the Texas Longhorns, a team that also made the playoff, a team that I think is going to make the playoff this year, a team that is loaded with talent and has a genius as a head coach in Steve Sarkisian? Is that really what you want? No, not at all. So, look, Dan and Pete on ESPN, from ESPN, Dan Murphy and Pete Thamel, they mentioned that a suspension's on the table, which for a level 2 violation, sure, it is, of course. Michigan better try to string this out as much as possible once the notice is actually delivered. And a reminder, this is a draft of the notice of allegations. The real one hasn't even showed up yet, but it's going to soon. Then you have a clock, 45-day clock. You better run that thing out if you're Michigan, because you do not want your head coach suspended for the first game of the season and go into the Texas game. Granted, it is in Michigan, as his first game, have that as his first game as a full-time head coach. Now, this is a distraction. For last year's team, maybe not, because it was so veteran laden. This year, you got all these moving parts, man. Like, Sherrone Moore has not done this before. He has not run a program during fall camp. Now, yes, he has been a head coach. But what did we say last year when Harbaugh got suspended? Oh, he's the head coach 6 days a week. He's just not there on game day. Okay. Well, Sherrone Moore hasn't figured himself out yet. Like, I understand that, yeah, he's got a pretty good idea of what he's doing. He hasn't coached in fall camp yet. He's still got position battles to worry about. Now he's dealing with this, the possibility of him not even being there, potentially having a show cause. That's a problem. So, yes, this could become a distraction for Michigan, because all of those moving parts, especially the youth on the roster, or I should say inexperience on the roster in key positions, really prevents him from focusing 100% on making those players leaders, because he doesn't even know who those players are yet. He doesn't necessarily know who those true leaders are. Got a pretty good idea that Donovan's going to be one, got some others. Sure, fine, I get it. But it's not like last year. But the most important part of this story from ESPN, the most important part, and I say that without equivocation, that dude in the Central Michigan hat is Connor Stalions. Finkel is Einhorn. Einhorn is Finkel. According to this draft, they found that the dude on the Central Michigan sideline against Michigan State last year, wearing Central Michigan gear, was Michigan analyst Connor Stalions. Yes. We all thought it. We all, like, look, this dude, this is not like, I would say this is very similar to the Jim McElwain naked on a shark picture, right? looks like him. You think it might be him, but you don't really, of course, it's not really him. I looked at this picture before with Connor Stalions with the Central Michigan hat on and the sunglasses on. I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe. Like, okay, there's a lot of guys that look pretty fit, have a pretty round face, have a goatee. It could be anybody. Looks kind of like him. It's like, there's no way. Just like we thought, there's no way Jim McElwain's naked on a shark. Sure enough, it's him. I'm wondering where the investigation goes from here, because he had to get a credential. He had to apply for one. He had to get one. That's not just a regular media credential where you have access to the field 45 minutes before a game and then you get kicked off and then they allow you back 10 minutes after the game ends, in some cases right after the game ends. That's not the case. He's on the bench during the game. That's a whole different world than the media world. That's an administrative thing. So does Central Michigan have some answers or questions to answer? Yeah, of course they do. How'd Connor Stalions get on the sideline with Central Michigan gear against Michigan State? That's the next step of this. That's what I'm really fascinated about, because what do we know about the NCAA? And it's not necessarily true all the time, but we're like, man, when the football team cheats, that men's volleyball team is going to get hammered. When football cheats, look out, women's soccer, the NCAA is coming down hard. Okay, it's not really true. That's not how things actually operate, but it's a funny conspiracy theory nonetheless. I think Central Michigan's in trouble, guys. I think Central Michigan is going to be in a situation now where it has questions to answer, and it's not going to have those answers. That's Central Michigan sideline. That's crazy. That is going to be fascinating to hear what happens next, how it involves Central Michigan, Michigan State, because they were playing, and all the directional Michigan schools. Because if we have some sort of like interwoven fabric of cheating, or, there's all of these teams are getting together to hate Michigan, that is awesome. That is fascinating. Of course, there's a documentary coming. The reason we're talking about Connor Stalions again before this draft of notice of allegations came out is because there is a Netflix series on Connor Stalions, and this will be part of it. Now, all of a sudden, I wanted to watch it anyway. I'm so pumped about it. Now, like, I'm more excited about this than I was the first and second seasons of Last Chance U at East Mississippi. This is going to be awesome. Because think about this. It dominated our discussion from, what did this story say? October 2023, when Connor Stalions and that story was reported, the same day that Sherrone Moore allegedly deleted 52 text messages. October 2023 through mid-January, when Jim Harbaugh went to the NFL after winning the national championship. Because remember, at that time, it's like, oh yeah, he's riding off in the sunset. Everything is hunky-dory. He's leaving Michigan in a spot where, yeah, it might get hammered, but it's worth it because they have a national championship. He's going to relive his dream, get another shot at the NFL in Los Angeles. It's the perfect dysfunctional ending to his tenure there. Now we get to relive the whole thing in this Netflix series. That's going to be fantastic. Okay. Bad news on the injury front. I hate this, man. The one thing I don't want to hear about any school is that a star player got injured. Because if there's all this hype going into the season and, everybody is excited about a Heisman contender or a stud defensive lineman, to lose him, it's just heartbreaking. And we got a little bit of that this weekend, or at least it felt like that this weekend, when Florida running back Montrell Johnson Jr. suffered a knee injury and is going to get arthroscopic surgery. Luckily, it's not a torn ACL. That's the great fear, right? That's the great fear, is that Montrell Johnson, who I think not only is obviously is the best Florida running back this year, I think he was better than Trevor Etienne last year. We can get to that in a second. But the fear is that he's gone. Now, arthroscopic knee surgery, you might be ready for the start of the season. Might not. That's a good thing. That's a really good thing. Bad thing. And that's Florida's schedule. We sit here, we talk about Florida's schedule a lot. And like we did at media days when I was there. And, Josh Payton and I talk about it pretty much all the time. And, it's like, it's one of those things where, Billy Napier's in trouble. We don't talk about the first 4 games. Well, here they are. Here are the first 4 games. We know about Miami and Gainesville, Samford, whatever, Texas A&M, and at Mississippi State before a bye week. That, it's not the gauntlet after the second bye week. Obviously, nobody wishes that on their worst enemy, the 5-game gauntlet after their second bye week, starting with the cocktail party. But Texas A&M is going to be tricky. Hopefully Montrell Johnson's back by then. And do not ever, 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 ever discount Mississippi State and Starkville. Ever. I don't care if it's a JV team. When you go into that place, you better have your big boy pants on. Now, that's game 4, and, Montrell Johnson will probably be healthy by then. But it does leave a very slim margin for error. Because there's no question that Montrell Johnson is the number 1 back. Now, they have Tavon Wade, they have Caden Daniels, they have Jaden Boss, So they've got dudes that can replace him, but do you really want to go into a season with so much uncertainty at running back, even though you have a dynamic quarterback? Because a dynamic quarterback can't really run. Graham Mertz can't. He's not. Maybe you put DJ Lagway in, maybe have a package for him if Montrell can't get back. But a narrative popped up when this news broke, and I kept scratching my head. I was like, what are we talking about? This is our first weekend back from Mexico, went to a Braves game, did some other stuff for school, whatever, this weekend. And it popped up, and I kept thinking, oh, my God, that's it's Trevor Etienne. No, Montrell. That's not like, this is the worst case scenario because, but Montrell Johnson's not the number 1 back. Now they're screwed because they're top 2 backs left. I'm like, okay, what order? What order are we talking about here? Because this dude, Montrell Johnson, in my opinion, is better than Trevor Etienne. And we saw that at times last season. We saw games where he took over. So it's a big, big deal. A much bigger deal than the loss of Trevor Etienne. If Trevor Etienne was on that roster and the same injury happened to him, same time, the recovery time was similar, it would not be as big of a deal as it is with Montrell Johnson. Hopefully he comes back. But again, check out this brutal stretch. And I say that because Miami is going to be no joke. Miami is going to be no joke. Don't really care about Samford, but Texas A&M, what if they beat Notre Dame in week 1? Are we talking about Texas A&M as a contender? Maybe. Got to get by Florida. And if Florida doesn't have Montrell Johnson, it's going to be a lot easier. So that's a big injury, guys. It's a big injury. We will have a lot of Auburn talk coming up on tomorrow's show. The amount of momentum that Hugh Freeze has on the recruiting trail is unbelievable. He is setting this team up to be a national championship contender sooner rather than later. We'll talk about that on the next episode of College Football Smothered and Covered. And we will talk about the first coach in college football who will be fired in 2024. Yes, there are odds out about that. And I love this. I love those odds. That's that offseason. Like, look, we talk about this a lot, how a lot of this offseason gambling stuff, especially early in the offseason, are just for clicks and to get people excited or talking or whatever. And we fall into that trap on this show a lot. Believe me, we do it an awful lot. But this one always makes me chuckle because there are one or two on there where I'm like, I don't know about that. But there's one guy on there, Deion Sanders, who has some issues too. That's what you call a mid-show tease, guys. That's what you call a mid-show tease. Go to Athlon Sports, okay? There's a story about the culture at Colorado. And it details maybe, I wouldn't say hazing, but the high-profile players get treated differently than lower-profile players, and not how you would think. Shiloh Sanders, Shadur Sanders, they go after these players, like Cormani McClain, like some other players. And we've heard some rumblings about what happened with Cormani McClain and his exit from Colorado. But it goes into weapons. It goes into attitude. It goes into like the wild, wild west and the culture just crumbling. Go read it, because this is like Florida mid-2000s, late 2000s, Urban Meyer losing control type program failure. And we're going to talk about that on the next show as well, because it's a big piece. I urge you, go do your homework. Go to Athlon. They do a great job over there. My friend Steven Lawson does a great job over there. Other folks as well. Go read it. We're going to talk about it tomorrow. It's going to be a loaded show. It's going to be a loaded show. But again, happy to be back. Very tan. We're going to do this show. A lot of changes coming to the show. So stay tuned. You'll hear all about it. Until tomorrow, though, have a great day.